Also, I would like to welcome all our brothers and sisters which are attending this lecture, which is about charitable contracts. I would like to announce that there is a link in the chat for the group of WhatsApp. You can join us there. You can start now, Professor Luqman.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونتوب إليه ونعوذ به من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Very good afternoon to all of you all over the world. Those who are Khalij, especially from Kuwait and from other parts of the world, I greet you with the noble greeting, which is Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Today will be our fifth and the last lessons on Al-Uqud Al-Shari'iyya, Islamic contracts, sales, Al-Bay' fil Islam. We talk about the types of bay in Islam. We talk about al-gharar, we talk about al-riba, we talk about other issues related to riba. Then last week, we started talking about al-buyu' or al-uqud al-shari'iyya. We talk about al-ma'awada as part of the contract in Islam, which is allowed. And part of the things we talk about in al-ma'awadat is as-salam, and we talk briefly on other topics which I will be talking about today. Today, inshallah, I will focus on the remaining part of what we've talked about last week. Some of them are about al-murabaha. Then we talk about al-ina, bi'ud-dayn, al-urbun, and al-tawarruq. Then we will come back to the second part of the topic, which is buyu' tabarru'at, the al-qard al-hasan, and al-hiba, and so on and so forth. So the half of today's lecture will talk about the types of al-buyu' al-ma'awada, and we will make sure that we round up that as quicker as possible. Then we now talk about today's topic, which is about buyu' at-tabarru'at. As you know, that in Islam, al-aslu fil ma'amalat al-ibah, the fundamental principles in Islam on transaction is that permissibility is permissibility, meaning that anything that is not prohibited, no one can prohibit it. And that is why some of the innovation in ma'amalat today will be considered as ibah, except if they go contrary to the dictates of the text of Islam. That is what Allah says it is not allowed, and what the Prophet ﷺ says it is haram. So some of the al-buyu' al-ma'awada that it is allowed, it is murabaha. So murabaha is from ribh, that is to make profits from something and to gain from it. It is a sale of commodity at the price the seller had purchased it, with the addition of a stated profit known to both seller and buyer. So it is a cost plus profits, in which the seller expressly discloses the profits. So this type of sales is quite different from al-musawama. Al-musawama, you don't need to disclose the price of your commodity, and you do not need to disclose the profits. The only thing you need to do is to tell the buyer how much you are going to sell your commodity. If he likes, he will take it. He can reduce it. And if you like, you accept. And if you like, you say no, and we go. But in murabaha, the price of the commodity in the market must be disclosed to the buyer, meaning that the seller needs to tell the buyer that this commodity I want to sell to you is 1,000. And my profit there is just only 10%. So if you have disclosed the price of the commodity to the buyer, then if there is any reduction in the price of that commodity, you need to return the excess to the buyer. Say, we tell the buyer that this commodity where we have been selling it for 1,000, it is a market 1,000. But I want to have 10% profit on it, meaning that I will take 1,100 dinar. And the buyer put the money on top of it, and you went to the market to get this commodity to buy it by yourself before you sell it to the buyer. And you got know that it is 1,200. So the buyer need to put more on top of it, not just only the 1,000 that you agree, but it has to buy it at the price that you agree. You saw it in the market, plus your profits, meaning that it will run into 1,400 or 1,350 according to the calculation. So this is a kind of business that is quite different from the one we know. The condition for doing it is that the knowledge of the initial price or cost by the buyer must be known. That is, sale is not valid if the initial price is not known during the contract session. So you must tell the buyer that this is the price of this commodity or type of this commodity in the market. But it doesn't need to pay you money. You need to have the commodity first. That is why the knowledge of the profit margin, otherwise it is not Muraba. So you must let them know the margin of your profits. Then you shouldn't trade on the riba elements. Any product that it is ribawiya, you shouldn't do it as Muraba, meaning that you cannot get dates from someone and give him dates back. So date will not be the price and it won't be the profits. So it must be another commodity or a currency that he has to pay for you for the commodity you want to sell. Murabaha in financing, how does it go? It goes in these legs. The first leg is that bank and client sign a master agreement whereby bank promises to sell and the client promises to buy a specified commodity and an agreed ratio of profit added to the cost. So they will agree, both of them. So try to understand this. There must be agreement between the two. That become a binding agreement, and some scholars say it is not binding if there is any defects in the property. The second leg is that the bank appoints the client as its agent for purchasing the commodity on its behalf based on wakala. So it will make the buyer as wakil to buy the commodity, but not necessarily that it will be like that. So the bank can go and buy that commodity and sell it for the buyer with the profits. The third leg is that the client purchases the commodity on behalf of the bank and takes possession as an agent of the bank. So if the bank appoints the buyer as an agent, so the agent will go to buy the commodity on behalf of the bank and has the possession of the commodity. So the client makes an offer to purchase the commodity from the bank. So now they will not start the offer and acceptance. So the buyer will now say, okay, we've agreed that we buy, but we have to do the process normally as it's supposed to be. So I want to buy it, then the bank will now sell it to the buyer. The fifth is that the bank accepts the offer and sell is concluded, ownership transfer to the client. So here you will see that initially the ownership of the property belongs to the bank, not to the buyer. And that is one of the core major problem in Murabaha in the banks today. The bank must make sure that the commodity belongs to him. It is bought with the name of the bank or any financing agent, not the buyer. Because if the bank doesn't possess the commodity, it cannot sell it. You cannot buy what you do not possess before. And that is why all the Muslim scholars say the bank or the seller must possess the commodity before he can sell it to the buyer. So this is how it goes. The first leg, as you see, you will identify what you want to buy, the good. Then you go to the bank. The bank will purchase the commodity on spot. It will pay the money for the owner of the property. Okay? Then the third leg is, the first leg is to approach, identify the commodity. The second is to approach the bank. The third is the bank will purchase, not you, or it can use you as an agent. Bank can purchase the goods itself or appoint you as the agent or anybody. The first leg is that the bank now will sell it to you on deferred payments. In most cases, it will be deferred payments. That is, you will not pay the price of the commodity instantly to the bank. So probably you will spread it for 10 years, 3 years, 2 years, according to what you agree upon. So this is very important, especially in the buying house. If I want to buy a house, the house are built, or houses are built here and there. And I saw the house and I love the house. Then I can approach the bank. When I approach the bank can approach the owner of the house, as the one of our colleagues asked a question last week. So the bank will now approach the owner of the house or the constructor, constructing company or property seller. Then they will now buy the house on spot. They will pay the money completely or whatever they agree. Then the bank will now come back to you that I've purchased the house that you wanted. Then we need to do the agreement between us. You don't have the money, it's a 1 million dinar that you can pay for 10 years. You pay 1,000 or 2,000. But my profit on this house will be 10% or 20% according to agreement. The Muslim scholars, they said there is no any problem in this. But what is the problem in Murabaha? First, to assume that Murabaha is an instrument for all types of financing offered on the loan and interest-based bank. That is not true. Yes, of course, it resembles something they do in conventional. Let me give you an example. In conventional, the bank will give you money, say 1 million dinar, to buy a house, and they will charge you 10%, 20% on top of it, and they will spread it for 10 years. You pay. If you defer, they can negotiate with you, they can put more on it, and so on and so forth. So that is quite different from Muraba. Muraba, yes, you identify the house, you approach the bank as in the conventional, but the bank will not give you money in Islam. It will go and buy the house or appoint you as its agent to buy the house. But the house must be bought by the name of the bank or the name of the agent. Now, here is the difference. If you see that, oh, no, I cannot buy it anymore, the Muslim scholar disagree on this in contemporary issue. Whether the agreement, initial agreement before is binding on you to buy the house, you cannot change your mind, or you can change your mind. It depends on the circumstances. Majority of Muslim scholars in this contemporary, they said you are supposed to buy the house. Is a binding agreement, because if you opt out, the bank will lose. The bank will lose, and there is no any point for bank to acquire many houses without achieving what they want. The other thing in it is that sale of commodity to the client effected before it is acquired from supplier. This is another gray area that sometimes the bank will just give you the money as an agent, and the commodity will be your own immediately after, before the agreement or the proper agreement between the bank and the owner of the house. So they will be charging you as if you have bought the house. That is not allowed, it's prohibited, because the contract is not yet sealed, it is not yet ended or concluded. So the bank must buy the house first before it can start charging you for buying the house or claiming that you are the owner of the house even before he got it from the supplier. Entering into Muraba on commodities already purchased by the client from a third party. So sometimes they will come to the Muraba on commodity already purchased by the client. So the client already purchased it. It seems that it just came to you to get money, come to the bank to get money and pay, and the bank will now put the profit on top of it. That is Ainu riba. It is riba. It seems that you just loan the money, lend the money, and you put profit on it. There is no any contract or say just lending the money and get profits. There are some other issues raised in Muraba. One of them is to use the interest rates as benchmark in pricing the house or determining the profits. Yes, of course, before the bank can determine how much they're going to profit, or if they spread the money for you to pay for 10 years, they use LIBOR, the London-based interest rates, to determine how much they should charge you for 10 years, for 5 years, for 3 years. If you want to pay quickly within 2 years, how much they will charge you as their profits. So this is being questioned in Islamic law. But majority of scholars said, when we do not have any alternative, then I think we should still continue, because the bank needs to know how much he wants to profit and to project the profit. And there is nothing wrong in it to use. I think many scholars, they have argued for this, but we are yet to have our benchmark of pricing commodity today. Promise to purchase is an issue. Sale does not take place before the bank take possession. The right of clients not to buy is there. So I've mentioned this one before, saying that you promise to buy, yes, but can you opt out? Can you say, I don't want to buy anymore? If the bank will not run into loss, yes, of course. But if there will be any loss on the part of the bank, there is a need to have what they call binding agreement between the two. However, the other problem will be the bank has sold something, or there are two contracts in one. And that is not allowed from Sharia point of view. But in contemporary, because of some issues that could arise from this, some scholars said it is okay. Some said that, yes, they don't interpret as this one, because you can still opt out. And in most cases, the client who want to buy the house will buy it at the end of the transaction. Whether deferred payment sale based on markup price is totally replication of riba. This issue has been raised that the markup price and the profit on these in the deferred payment, is it like riba that the bank gives 1 million and is taking 1.5 million over 10 years? Is it like riba or not? I've said that if the bank actually bought the house with its name and he sold it to the client as a third leg, there is no any problem. But if not, then there is issue of riba in it. So that is for the murabaha. We now come to some contentious says that could involve riba in Islam. One of them is bay'ul ina, second is tawarruk, and urban, and bay'ul day. This topic has been mentioned 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, but I will quickly run them within short period, and we see what the scholar said about them. Then we now come to today's business. Al-ina is repurchasing or buyback contracts, where, as we said it here, A sells a certain item to B at 1,100 for a deferred price. A deferred price. So I will take the property from you. I will not pay today. I may pay tomorrow, next week, 1 year. Okay? A gets a claim of 1,100 and B gets the sole item. That's done. Now B next sell the same item to A. Immediately or after a while, to sell the commodity back to the A, Mr. A, who sold the commodity to him on deferred payments. This is it. So he will now sell it in a lower price. You see, this is 1,100, but if we now sell it 1,000, that's it, cash payments to get the cash. Thus, A gets back the item. So item A comes back to him and he will give out 1,000. But he will be expecting 1,100 from B. So that is bay'u al-'ina. And it could come in different way as well. Like B sells a certain item to A. It may be B starts selling. B will sell imaginary item for Mr. A at 1,000 for cash. He will get it cash. Then B gets the money and A gets the sold item. Now A will now come back to sell the item to B at higher price for a deferred price. Thus, B gets back the item and $1,000, and A has a claim against B for 1,100. So, in two ways, ina can happen. That A will start selling something on defer and buy it back on cash by paying cash to B, or B can start selling in a very low price, then B will now buy it back from him on the far higher price. So it can be in two ways. So in contract of say, do we need to look into the intention and meaning of the expression and the wording structure? So this question has been asked in fiqh, that هل العبرة في العقود بالمعاني والمقاصد أو بالألفاظ والمباني. So two different views on this particular. So when it's like there is something inner intention is to get money by B. He wants cash, but there is no any way to do it except to go through this process. So for that reason, they are trying to trick Islamic law or circumvent the rules in order to achieve what they want. So Malik and the emphatically But Hanafi forbid it as haram, and Shafi consider it abominable, that is makruh. In all of them, the Shafi particularly looks into the mabani wal alfam. The contract is completed. He doesn't want to know the intention of these two parties. Unless if they declare the intention, the Shafi will tell them, according to his expression in Al-Ummu, he said, until when they say, tell me what they have in intention, I will not tell them that this is not good, it is ina. But if I do not know the intention, I will not go deep into what is in the intention of the two parties. I will allow the sale to go, but I will consider it as makruh. There is one bear they call BBA, bear bithamani mu'ajjal, bear bithamani mu'ajjal, that is, sell with deferred payment, as we have been saying. This kind of sales is very common in Bay'ul Ina. As we said in Bay'ul Ina, there must be what they call deferred payments. But deferred payment, no problem about deferred payments. But sometimes it includes what they call al-ina or tawarruk, or something like hila in Sharia, which is not allowed. So how does it come and resemble what they call bay'ul ina? The customer, the first leg will be the customer sells to financier. Okay, the customer will sell. Then the financier pay in cash. Okay, then financier sells to customer. Then the customer pay in defer. So as I mentioned in Ina, they will the feminine agile is quite common like that, especially when it is arranged or the same commodity comes back to the owner. If the same commodity comes back to the owner and he releases money to the other party, it is al-ina. However, at tawarruk, as we be talking about, I just mentioned the similarity between the two, but I'm not going to go into that. The issue raised in the ina is that transaction between the two parties only on the same assets, if it is the same assets. So that gives rise to the assumption that apparent sale and purchase transaction are fictitious. That is, it is just a fake, a false one. They're trying to trick. That's why they go through that process. The assumption is the parties are not interested in transfer of ownership of the property, but in the transfer of cash between them to be paid at a later time with markup. So the interest is that they want the Mr. B want to get money, and he doesn't know how to do it except through initiating a commodity, a property that will be exchanged between the two. They don't want to exchange the ownership of the property, but they want to get cash and put extra costs or extra money on that money, which is ainu riba. And that is why majority of scholars prohibits riba, and some say it is not allowed. Most jurists disallowed ina, arguing on the basis of illegal motive. That is, they have illegal motive or intention of the parties gather from the circumstances. And as we know, al-umur bimaqasidiha, matters are determined by intention. Okay, only Bank Nagara of Malaysia and Security Commission of Malaysia, they allow it with some strict regulation. Strict regulation. Anyone who is interested can go to the law or the constitution that allows Bay'ul Ina to operate in Malaysia. Tawarruk is also very close to that, but the difference between the Tawarruk and Ina is that not necessarily that the property comes back to the first party. If it goes to the third party, that is Mr. A, Mr. B, and Mr. C. Mr. A sells the commodity to Mr. B on deferred payments, on deferred payments, that he will pay back maybe in 10 years or 3 years, but higher purchase. So 1,500. And Mr. B takes the property to the market to Mr. C and sell it in the actual price of the market, which is 1,000. So he has to pay 1,500 back to Mr. A, but he has got the cash from Mr. C to do whatever he wants. Now, if it is like that, there could be no any problem. But majority of Muslim scholars, especially those who look into it from another economic point of view, they said is like aina, is not allowed. Okay? Especially if it is arranged one, organized tawarruk. And that is why they declare it as not permissible. Not permissible according to OIC. If it is arranged, how it is arranged, you come out from one office in the same bank, you enter into another office. You buy it in one office, you sell it in another office. You buy it in one office, higher purchase, then you go to another office in a lower purchase with the cash. That is arranged tawarruk, which is not allowed from Sharia point of view. Bay'ul al-Urbun, I talked about this one briefly before, is down payments that you pay. Is it allowed or not allowed? From Muslim scholar point of view, they see it as taking people's money without justification. And Allah says, وَلَا تَأْكُلُ أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ. Okay, but some scholars say that if the uruf has established something like that, then it is allowed, especially to caution someone not to tie down the commodity. So you go to Mr. A to buy a commodity. And you say, okay, I do not have money now. I will come back tomorrow. Mr. A may not be able to sell the commodity. He may even see buyer, but he couldn't sell it because of you. Then he asks you to pay down maybe 10% of that commodity. So if you do not come tomorrow to buy, or you come, you say, I'm not interested. Is it allowed for Mr. A to say, I'm not going to give you the down payment because I saw the buyer, I've seen the buyer yesterday, I couldn't sell it because of you? Or he should return the money back. So this is the issue. Imam Ahmad bin Hanbali argues for its permissibility based on another hadith that is reported from the Prophet. But majority of scholars, they see it as something which is not allowed, makruh, because it's like taking people's money without any justification. Okay, these are the arguments, especially Sheikh Wahab Zuhaili. He argued for its permissibility based on custom irf. And some other scholars, they believe that it is not allowed because we cannot say whether it is penalty or is the right of the seller to take it. Bay'u is another contentious sales in Islam. Bay'u in very brief, is that your dain is being sold to another person, and another person will not put extra money on top of it and ask you to pay it. So this has been condemned by many scholars, especially majority of Muslim scholars. And they say it is gharar, it has some element of riba, and so on and so forth. So in that case, it is not allowed because the dain is not possessed. That commodity is not possessed. And there's hadith, وَلَا تَبِعْ مَا لَيْسَ عِنْدَكَ. So the absence of possession of that commodity has rendered the commodity to be risk, and it has element of al-gharar. Some believe that there is a riba in it because 1,000 I owe you become 1,500 to another party. So if you sell my debt to a company for 1,000 and that company puts additional charges on top of it, that will make it to become 1,200 or more than that. And if I pay 1,200 for a debt of 1,000, it means there is an increase in that loan, which is not allowed from Sharia point of view. Okay, so that is for the Bay'ul Ma'awada, as I've promised. To round up these classes for the past 5 weeks, we need to look into Uqud Tabarru'at, that is gratuitous contracts. Tabarru'at means that you want to do good thing, you want to be kind, charity, and Islam encourages something like that. However, there are different ways of doing it. Some could be called loan, qard, or salaf. And some is area, loan of usable item free of any charge. Okay, that is, area is mostly used in the commodity or property. It is not like currency. But qard or salaf could be a commodity or it could be currency. Another one is hiba, gift. It is also tabarru'at. Ibra, rebates. So you owe me money and I give you some discount on top of it. It's a rebate, or I step down from my rights. I said I don't need it anymore. It is also tabarru'at that you do to secure the pleasure of Allah in this life and in the hereafter. Wasiya, as we know, bequests, waqaf, endowment, kafala, and so forth. So we will talk about these 3 items: loan, area, and hiba, for the purpose of this class. The rest could be done in any other classes, inshallah. So qard, what is qard? Qard means to give anything having value on the ownership of any other by way of virtue, so that the latter can avail himself of the same for his benefits, with the condition that the same or similar amount of that thing should be paid back on demand or at the settled time. So in this definition, we see that when you want to do qard, it must be a valuable thing that you own, and you are doing it for the virtue, not to make money. And the latter, the other person will take the benefit from what you have given him, and he must return it back to you, whether the same thing or similar to it, at the time you agree, or whenever you want it, you can call it back. So the jurists are unanimously agreed on the legality of al-qard. There are many hadith on top of it, in the book of hadith. The second one is salaf, is also loans for specified period. That is the difference between salaf and qard. Either short, intermediate, or long-term loans. So salaf is another name for salam. They also call it salam. Man aslafa falyuslif fi kada wa kada. Therein, the price of the commodity is paid in advance, while the commodity or the content value is supplied in the future. That is salam. So the salam you will pay now, then the commodity will be delivered to you later. Okay, that is salam, and sometimes in the book of fiqh you will see it as salaf. Okay, but the salaf we are talking here is like al-qard. It's like al-qard here, but the difference between salaf and the qard is that salaf is it has specific period. It has specific period. So you will return it back at the time you agree. At the time you agree, not the time the owner of the property demands. Okay, so that is why I put them together here. I said, qard is a loan paid or returned on demand. So you can ask for it anytime you want. But salaf is a loan for a fixed time. So you cannot return or demand for its return until the time you agree. I do salaf of my car to my friend for 1 month. He has right to use it for 1 month. If you demand for it before the end of a month, it's not proper, but he can give it to you because it is ihsan. But it still he has a right to, oh, no, you agree at the end of the month. Both are classified as day. Both are classified as day. Both of them are day in Islamic law. That is, whether qard or salaf, both of them must be returned back to the owner. Both of them must be returned back to the owner. Dain is created as a result of any credit transaction in which one of the counter values is different. So the essence of dain is that when someone gives something out and you need to return it back, then that is dain from Sharia point of view. But the only thing that is not allowed from dain is that the owner of the property shouldn't demand for excess, for increase, whether by nasi'ah or by al-fadl. But as we said in our classes, bay' al-fadl or riba al-fadl is bay' of exchange of sales. Okay, it's then is riba al-bay'. But riba nasi'ah is riba ad-duyu, as we've mentioned in our classes. Now, sorry. There are many principles for al-qard. Essential elements of qard is that we need to have the lender and the contract. The contract must be initiated. I want this. I want you to borrow me this, that I lend you, then you seal it. For particular time, yes. Or you can open it for demand. Whenever I need it, I will ask for it. So necessary condition for muqtarid and muqrid and muqtarid is essentially the owner, the borrower must have capability for responsibility. That is, whenever you want it back, it must be able to return it back. Then also, the lender also must have capability of giving out something. If it is majnoon, it will not be allowed. If it is a sabi, it won't be allowed because they don't have that responsibility. If something goes wrong, they cannot be prosecuted. Should possess legal capacity to enter into the contract. That is, they are not being coerced to do it. They are not being forced to do it. So there must be mutual agreement between the two before that can be done. Now, principle govern qard. The maxim says any qard that brings benefits to the lender is haram. Kullu qardin jarra naf'an fahuwa riba. Now, let me explain. When you give something out as qard, there should be no any benefits the lender should gain from it. Typical example is that I gave you 1,000 dinar. I gave you 1,000 dinar. But because I gave you 1,000 dinar, you are leveraging on it. Whenever we go to shopping center, you say, oh, Mr. Lukman or Sheikh Lukman, can you buy me this food? Because you loan me money, I buy it. So you are gaining from that loan you gave me. And that is not fair. Or sometimes, as some capitalists are doing, because they gave you money, they will use you for work that they should pay, but they will not pay you. So they will take advantage of giving out card to you, and they will be using you, and they will not give you any return on it. This is not accepted from Sharia point of view. So any excess over card is permitted if there is no any agreement on it that I have to do it. But if I do it, that is the borrower, when he returns the money back, from ihsan, he puts on top of it. That is allowed based on the hadith of the Prophet and the practices of the Sahaba, that if I borrow something, I can, from my own will, I can increase it. But not the lender will request for the excess. Not the lender will request for the excess. However, according to another maxims, if it has been known that whenever you borrow me something, I have to do this, is like agreement, and that is also not accepted. The other one is what they call aria, or aria, the tashdid on the ya. Is another term used for borrowing good, which means to give any commodity to another for use without taking any return. So as I said earlier on, area is used for property, not currency per se. But currency, card is used for currency, it could be used for other property. But when you say something is area, it means you are giving me a commodity to use. In this sense, it is also a virtuous act like qard. The borrowed commodity is treated as liability of the borrower, who is bound to return it to its owner. So in the hadith of the Prophet during the Hajj al-Wida, it mentioned about this. It says, Al-Ariya Muwadda. It is, Al-Ariya has to be returned back to the owner. So you cannot take it for granted that, oh, he gives me his property and you are using it and you do not want it to be returned back. For instance, I have a house. I travel to abroad and I don't use it. So you come to me, so can I use this house until you come back? Once I come back, you have to vacate the house because there's a specific period that we agree that whenever I come back from abroad, you evacuate the house for me because it is Ariya. I lend you the house for a period of time. However, if I come back before the time we agree, say we know that every September or Ramadan, I will come back from university in abroad, but I came back before Ramadan. Are you allowed to leave the house or not? Yes, some scholars say you're allowed to leave, or he also has right to go and rent an apartment and come back whenever the agreement expires. So the difference between area and qard is that the latter, which is area, the exact borrowed commodity has to be returned. The exact commodity need to be returned in area. But in qard, the similar of the loaned commodity has to be paid by the debitor. I think you understand that. In area or area, the exact commodity need to be returned. A house should be returned. A car must be returned. A cloth must be returned. My shoe must be returned if I borrow you my shoe. However, in qard, the exact money you give me, I spend it, but I can give you similar value of the amount of money you borrow. You borrow me 1,000, but not necessarily the exact currency you give me. If you give me 1,000 ringgits and I wanted to give it to you back, I may give you $1,000 if that is equivalent to it. Okay, and that's the difference between the two. So, and there are also evidence on the permissibility of area. Generally, there are four essential elements of area. We have to have al-ma'ir, lender, al-musta'ir, borrower, the sigha, and musta'ar, the objects of the area. In the contract of area, there are 6 necessary conditions for lender and borrower, as we said in Al-Qard. They must be capable of taking responsibility. They must be sound mind, that is not mentally retarded. And they must have reached the age of puberty, the baligh. They must not be prohibited from dealing with the property. So if they are being prohibited to do that, they cannot do it. They must not be declared bankrupt. If someone is insolvent, he may not be able to go into the area because he must use that property to settle the debt. And there is no any coercion exerted on them. That is, no ikra on both of them. They do it voluntarily. So, what about the objects? That is, the area, the property should be known and usable, of which its substance is not consumed by itself or by its use. What I mean by this is that when you give me the house, the house is not consumed, but the usufruct of the house is only consumed. So in area or even the al-qard, the only thing you need to use in it is the benefits, not the essence, not the that. If you use the that is not area. So you must return the house back to me as it is. No condition is allowed which require the return of any object other than the borrowed object. So the borrower may lend the borrower object to a third party, but he must not hire it out or give it as a pledge or security. So if I get area from you, I may give it to another third party, but I'm not allowed to make money from it, to lend it, to make it as a commercial property. So the borrower is also entitled to make use of the loan without consideration or payments. So he doesn't need to pay something back in lieu of what he used, that is the nafa that he gained from the property. He doesn't need to return anything back for it. So the last on the list is hiba. What we mean by hiba is like a general gift, but it is not sadaqah, because sadaqah has asnaf, but hiba doesn't. Hiba, you can give it to a rich person, but you cannot give sadaqah to a rich person. So the purpose of hiba is to show love to the receiver, whereas the purpose of charity is to seek Allah's pleasure. But both of them can be done to seek Allah's pleasure. But in most cases, hiba is given to show love between the two parties. And the essential of hiba is aqidan, al-aqidain, the two parties of the contract, the sira and muhub, the object of hiba. Okay, so the two donor, that is the wahib, and the person who receives it, they must have the capacity, as we've said. The receiver's capacity to receive the object of hiba contract also is very important, but the guidance can be in proxy. That is, you can give hiba for a child that doesn't attain the age of puberty. The guidance of these minor, we take it on his behalf. Okay, Issues on hiba, binding and non-binding nature of hiba is very important. Can hiba be binding or not? Say, I promise to give you my house as a gift, as a hiba. Is it binding or not binding? The Muslim scholars say, if you haven't given it out and received by the other party, you can retract it. But if you have given it out, you cannot retract it back from the owner, from the one who received it. Because if you do it, you violate the hadith of the Prophet that anyone who returns back to his gift is like he vomits and he take it back. You have given it out. But before you give it out, that is the bone of contention. If there is a damage done to the other party, then you may pay for that damage. Let me give you an example, which I always give in the class. You promise me to demolish my house or to throw away my car because it's not good. It has been giving me problem. And you promise to buy hiba of new car for me. So when I dispose my car or demolish my house, you didn't build new house for me and you didn't buy new car for me. And I suffer as a result of your promise. The Muslim scholar, especially the Maliki, they consider that as binding. You have to buy it and you have to build it because there is a back consequence as a result of your failure to do it. And the Quran says, "Awfu bil uqud." Awfu bil uqud. The second issue is hiba at the end of ijara contracts. If you follow, we said that if you do contracts of ijara, al-muntaha bit-tamlik last week, that we end with the purchasing of the house. In some cases, they make it as hiba. They will just give it to you as hiba. What is the implication of it? Some scholars look into it from inward. They believe that there is something not good in the contract. Because if you promise to give me your house after I rent it for 10 years, and after 10 years, you say, no, I'm not going to give it to you, then I will start looking for another house. The implication is that if you didn't promise me, maybe I wouldn't have used your house for 10 years. So you get the rent of 10 years from me and you deny me owning the house. Then from there, some scholars said there's a bad consequence on failure to accept these agreements. Then you have to give me that house as hiba, as you promised from the beginning, because of the ayah, awfu bil uqud. The last but not the least is the hiba that many banks, Islamic banks, are giving to the clients. When I put money in the saving accounts, the contract will say it is what they are. So it's like they are keeping it for me. But they will give me hiba on it whenever they make any profits. Is it allowed or not? There are some arguments, but majority of scholars have said, because I do not impose it on them, they can give it to me because they use my money to make some profits. And if they give it to me, it's like a good gesture, which is not disapproved from Sharia point of view. From here, I think we've come to the end of our classes for the past 5 weeks. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our knowledge, to increase us in knowledge, to accept all these endeavors from all of us, the listener, the facilitator like me, and all people who support this program in Nadi al-Iqtisad al-Islami, from the edge to the moderator, and especially Jamiat al-Kuwait for giving us this opportunity to share our knowledge with our brothers and sisters all over the world. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect the country, al-Kuwait, to protect the head, the Amir of the country and all those who support the good deed in the country. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this program acceptable to him in this life and the hereafter, and to reward
آمين.
us with al-Jannah in the day of resurrection. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله ولكم ولجميع المسلمين إنه هو الغفور الرحيم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
Thank you, Dr. Rahman. Very nice lecture. نسأل الله أن تكون في ميزان حسناتكم. Now I want to go to the questions. If anybody have any questions, you can write it in the chat, or if you want to ask the Professor Rahman directly, he can raise his hand and I will allow him to talk.
Now, the question here says, هذه المسائل في أي مذهب؟ Can you listen to me?
Yes,
now,
yes, you can.
Yes, we take the opinions of majority and we explain whenever there is any difference in the opinion. Like I mentioned, Beul'ina, I mentioned that Maliki and Hanafi and Hanbali, they didn't support it, but Shafi'i says it's makruh. So we mentioned differences between the opinion. However, most of the masail, the issue we treated here, are contemporary issues. And we have to do what they call takif al-fiqhi, to establish the similarity among the Muslim scholars in madhahib. And we now look at what they said. If it is similar to the current issue, then we say all the Muslim madhahib, Maliki, Shafi, Hanbali, Hanafi, they support these kind of things. But if there's any divergent opinion among of them, we use the prevailing one, the majority, because in most cases the majority carry the votes, and we use them. But we are not obliged to follow. For instance, Beul'ina is allowed in Malaysia to some extent with regulation, but in the Gulf, it is prohibited. So when you are doing business in Gulf, you have to know the law of the land, that they follow majority of madhahib by prohibiting Beul'ina. However, if you're in Malaysia, you can follow the law of Malaysia by doing the contract of Ina, but you have to bear in mind that there are some rules and regulations governing the operation of Beul'ina in it. Wallahu ta'ala alam.
Another question
here is,
if I can say, if I gave someone money and they are in a difficult situation and not able to pay, most likely, can I count that as sadaqah now, even though initially it was a loan where I was expecting a return?
Yes, it is allowed from Sharia point of view that you can do two things. Either you give him time, فَإِنْ كَانَ ذُو أُسْرَةٍ فَنَظْرَةٍ إِلَى مَيْسَرَةٍ in Surah Al-Baqarah. If you can give him more time to pay it, you can tell him that it is still a loan. Whenever you have it, you pay it back until you die. Or you don't wait till it dies and you make it as sadaqah, and you change your niyyah to become sadaqah rather than to be al-qard. Both of them are allowed according to your situation. If you think you will still need the money or your children will need the money, you can put it as day till any time he got it, until when he dies. Even if he dies, his family can pay it, and if they cannot pay it, you can forgive him. But to forgive him is better than to, if you think that this man cannot pay it until he dies, then you can turn it to become sadaqah, and Allah will give you the reward of sadaqah. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Now, the other question?
Yes, the same person, he said, so do I need to pay zakat on that money, although not in my hand?
Yeah, you are not supposed to pay zakat on something that is not in your hand. So until the money is paid back to you, then you will pay zakat. And that is why the scholar said that the one who takes a loan supposed to pay zakat in the loan with him, not the one who released the loan, because that money is not yet in your possession, and it may not even be paid back to you. Okay, and the time you will pay it, you may even be in debt that you need to use that money to clear your debts. So you are not supposed to pay zakat from the money which is now with you. You have been giving it out as loan until when it comes back to you. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.
جزاكم الله خير. أستاذ حمزة، تستطيع أن تفتح المايك وتسأل الدكتور. I am allowing Mr. Hamza to open his mic and ask you, but he didn't respond. You can unmute yourself, Mr. Hamza. Fatima, Miss Fatima, you can.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
First, I'm going to thank you for the lecture. MashaAllah is very benefit, and Allah may reward you for all your lectures, inshallah. My question is, I have two questions. One of the question, I mean about the ihsan. Sometimes people when they give you Ghard Hassan, they call the ihsan. How can you explain to me more about that? How is called the ihsan? It is the Ghard Hassan. How related to the ihsan? Okay, this is one.
Al-Qard.
No. It's a Ghard because it's called Ghard Hassan, but you need to give it back. But they call it the ihsan.
Okay, I got it. The second one, the question.
And the second one, I guess about the mortgage between when you taking lending money to buy property, and is it between people? They're confused between when you take it to between the conventional banking and Islamic banking, and then when they lend and the property is not to be under the name in Islamic finance, but in conventional banking, your property is going to be under your name. And can you just give me more on that, please?
Okay. The first one is Al-Qard al-Hassan. The reason why they put the attribute of Hassan in it is that you don't need to pay extra money when you are returning the money back. It's not like Qard, the loan that it has riba. But this one, it doesn't have any increase. You don't need to pay any increase. Even the lender need to give you more time to pay it. If you cannot get it today, as you promised, you can pay back anytime. The more they give you time to pay it, the more the ihsan will be there. As I mentioned in the answer, I answered very quite not long time. So that is the reason why they put Hassan in it, Qard Hassan, okay, as opposed to the Qard that has riba, or Qard Jarra Nafa'an, any Qard that leads to some benefit for the lender. So it is not Hassan. If the lender exploits me on that money, it is not Hassan. But if the lender doesn't exploit me, it gives me time to pay back, then that is Hassan. Wallahu ta'ala alam. But the second question about mortgage, yes, we will continue to be confused about the conventional mortgage and the Islamic mortgage, simply because some of Islamic banks who are offering mortgage, they are not very sincere with what they are doing. They still construct the contract as the conventional. They still use some terminology of conventional. until when we use our terminology and we are transparent and we do not use any confusing terminology in the contract, then the Muslims who are buying the mortgage, they will differentiate between the Islamic one and the conventional one. However, there's difference between the two. Why? The conventional one will give you money to buy the house. You will get the house. Yes, of course. Islamic one, you get the house. The conventional one, you get the house. The Islamic one, you approach the bank that you want to buy the house. Conventional one, they will approach the bank. So the two leg. Islamic one, the bank need to go and buy the house, okay, or appoint you as the agent. But the house must be issued by their name, by the bank's name, not your name. Okay? The conventional will say, okay, we give you money to go and buy it. They don't have any business to do with the house. The Islamic one will tell you the kind of contract they use from Sharia point of view. Is it ijara? Is it murabaha? Okay? Is it musharakat mutanakisa? Those are the three types of contract is good for mortgage in Islam. But the bank will never use that kind of structure. They just loan you 10 million, you buy the house for 10 million, then they will calculate their interest on top of it for 10 years, and you pay more than 10 million, maybe 20 million or 15 million after 10 years. But in Islamic one, yes, also you pay the same thing. You pay up to 20 million or 50 million. The same thing as the conventional. But it is structured on risk, profit, and risk. Like Murabaha, there is a risk in it, there is profit in it for the bank. Musharakatul Mutanakisa, there is risk in it, there is profit in it. But in conventional one, there is nothing like that. There's no any risk for them, only profit. They are waiting for you to get to settle the bill. If not, they will sell the house, they will get their money and let you go. So these are the differences between Islamic mortgage and the conventional mortgage. But the problem we have today is that some of the Islamic banks who are offering the Islamic mortgage, they are not very sincere, and that is why we are still confused about the contract. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.
Ibrahim, you can open your mic. Mr. Ibrahim Saleh. Ibrahim Saleh. Dr. Salam, you can open your mic and ask the professor.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Thanks very much. I am very proud to hear this lecture and to join you here. I am a doctor in Islamic fiscal policy and also economic thought. I have 2 PhDs, but it is very important for me to join these lectures. This is not the first one, but I am really enjoying this, and I have a good and very important, useful also information from it. Barakallahu bikum, Professor, and wishing you all the best. But also I am as a consultant in one of the, as we call it, Al-Hay'a Al-Shar'iyya in many banks in Iraq. I want also just to add something very important that I always thinking about it, and I believe it also. It is from my professor who was the observer of my thesis. He said to me, just notice that every sadaqah is zakat, and it means kullu sadaqatin zakat wa kullu zakatin sadaqah. They are included together. That is very important. And really, I am also following this in my personal life. So just I wanted to add it for more, as you can say, benefit for all them. And thank you very much. God bless you, Professor. And I am very proud to hear your lectures and to be one of your audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very grateful. Now, any other comment before I do the final comments? Sheikh Abdul Latif? Hello?
Last person, Professor Luqman, which is, I think, Ijaz or Ijaz Thansir. Mr. Ijaz, you can open your mic and ask.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thanks for your good lecture, mashallah, good speech. And I have a question. My question is, how about an investment with a man or a company, and every month they give me a specific amount? Is this riba or not riba?
The company gives you what?
About investment. Hello? I gave some money to, yeah. Every month is specific amount. It is a riba or not riba? I won't understand that.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. It depends on the bank, the investment you have. If the investment says it is Sharia compliance, and they will not invest it in haram, and they will not give you money by guarantee that you must have this every month, it is allowed. Why? It's because when you give banks money for investment or any investment company, they will say that any profit they have, they will give you. But from Sharia point of view, they cannot promise you that every month they will give you 50-50 naira or 50-50 pounds. They cannot do that. It's not allowed to say, we'll be giving you 50-50 dinar every month. That will be like riba. But if they say we'll be giving you profit every month according to the profit we got, this month can be 20 dinar, next month 100 dinar, another month 10 dinar. It fluctuates according to the profit earned by the company, by the investment company. That is one. The second thing is that if there is any loss, which it will never happen in today's business, because they have what they call backup security. Whenever they have any loss, they will quickly bring some money from whatever they've saved. So they will try to give it to you. Or they will tell you that this month we didn't get any profit, but they have what they call overhead expenses. So they will use their overhead expenses to cover their operational. So any bank or any investment promise to give you certain specific amount of money every month. That's not good. It leads to riba. But they can give you money every month, but it may not be the same amount of money. If it is the same, it may be the same, but there is no any agreement on giving you that amount every month. That is the difference between a riba and the profit from any investment you have. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.
Before Mr. You comment, there is the last question he just asked Mr. Ammar. He said, is sale on map or plan allowed where you pay gradually as the construction progresses?
I cannot get that question properly. Can you repeat it, Sheikh?
Okay. Is sale on map or plan allowed where you pay gradually as the construction progresses?
Yeah, it's allowed. If you pay as the construction progresses, you pay certain amount of money gradually. It is allowed, but there must be, for instance, like istisna, and it's like istisna. Istisna, you can pay upfront the price, the money for the construction. You can pay in installments. Say the construction will take 1 year and the amount is 1 million dinar. So you divide it into 10 or 12 months. So every month when the construction progresses, I will give you 10%. So you give 10% of that 1 million until the construction finished. So that is allowed, but that must be agreement on what you want to do and how you want to do it. Otherwise, there could be some kind of gharar or jahala in that business, whereby the construction company will now hold you responsible for the failure of giving them money to construct. And they may even inflate the price. That is, increases the price you agree upon. So that will lead to litigation between you, the fight khusuma, which is not allowed from Sharia point of view. Let me say that not everything we do in transaction is riba. Some of them may be gharar, risk, maybe jahala, and it may be immoral, like asoma ala soma akhik. That is, you bargain on the bargain of your brother, which is not allowed. But it is not riba, and it is not gharar, but it is immorality, immoral attitude, which Islam doesn't want you to involve in. But some are altogether immoral, gharar, jahala, and riba. And some may have one or two among them. For our doctor who quickly comment on this, that kul sadaqah, very good. Whenever you do any good thing is sadaqah and also zakat. If you have intention of paying zakat, because zakat is paid for certain people, as not thamaniya. Okay, but sadaqah is open for many people. Many people. So you can pay zakat, sadaqah for ta'lim. You can pay it for the Quran. You can pay it for building of the mosque. You can pay it for many other things like that. Okay, but zakat must be paid for as naf as-thamaniya, as the Quran. So sometimes we say something is sadaqah, but we mean zakat. And sometimes we say zakat, we say sadaqah. Wa kullu zakatin sadaqah, as our doctor said, kullu zakatin sadaqah, wa laysa kullu sadaqatin zakat. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.
Before Dr. Luqman, I end this lecture, I would like to hand this certificate to you. Thank you, Dr. Luqman, for all your effort with us. Thanks also for all our brothers and sisters. Also, thank you for all our brothers and sisters who attended this class. نسأل الله أن يجعل هذا في ميزان حسناتكم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. شكرا جزيلا على هذه التقديمات. وأسأل الله أن يتقبل منا جهودنا ويجعلها في ميزان حسناتنا.
بارك الله فيكم.
والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى. So can I go? Can I leave?
Yes, the lecture is ended.